Hello everyone, my name is Meet the Changeling. I have been asked by a few of my fans to demonstrate my world building process, and I figured I would go ahead and make the video public for the simple reason I haven't actually seen anyone using my particular world building methods on any of the many videos or even in any of the books I've read on the subject. This is completely understandable, as most people are far more art focused than I am when it comes to world building. I lean towards the more realistic style, where I like everything to be interconnected and make sense, at least within the universe itself. That's the ultimate goal of the art style of world building as well. But I'm of the opinion that the more real you can make a world feel, the better the story is. And I think that you can actually find a good compromise between the artistic side of world building and getting something that is big and sweeping and grand and makes internal sense. Now, if, as an example of what I mean, anyone could make this background that you see on my desktop right now. It's a science fantasy world. It's a bar. You've got some bunch of aliens. You have people ordering drinks. There appears to be some small raccoonish-looking alien in the middle of the screen, as well as his taller human friend. That could easily be the main characters framed in this scene coming into a bar. And you can also see that there's some drinks on display here. Like, this lady has her blue drink, and she has a candle at the table, and she's talking to someone who's hidden behind my little desktop fences. And you also got this person up here looking down, perhaps a villain or a character they're here to meet, something like that. And that's like your whole scene dressing. That's not really the world building, but everything about this still gives a vibe. This is a future time and place that is still like our world is now. You gotta look at the small detail to see the world building in these things, but it's still equally important for the big character setup. Like in the back here, you got this guy next to this fancy curtain talking to this guy, like in the nice, well-lit corner of the establishment, but still without a direct line of sight of anyone. That's probably a political deal. This is a world with backdoor political shenanigans. You got this elevated band over the whole establishment. This is a world that appreciates classical musical instrument styles. And by classical, I mean, like, they don't just have someone playing a radio over speakers in the bar. They got a live band. They value the arts and entertainment on this planet. And then we have this interesting picture back here, which you can't tell if it's a painting or a big rack of bars in front of, bar product in front of a painting. It could be that, it could be something else, but it looks, because of this gold banding here, that there might be some kind of big portrait up above the bar. Perhaps this is an empire or a kingdom somewhere off in space. So that's the kind of things that we usually refer to when they talk about world building, the small context clues that make the world feel bigger and lived in. Those are the kind of world building details that, readers and viewers will see or understand, hopefully, when they're consuming whatever you've created. That's not all the world building that has to be done, though. There's a lot that goes into creating a story, because you, the author, also have to have a sense of what this world is, what it's like, and what can happen in it. Otherwise, how can you accurately and, more importantly, consistently portray this to your audience? Now, for the big world building stuff, the stuff I'm talking about how to make here, a lot of people go, well, don't bother with that. Just say, like, it's a democracy and there's elections and this guy's currently president of this planet. Well, yeah, that is the easy and quick way to do it, and it's a perfectly fine way to do it. But what if you wanted to have the actual election results for the last 150 years of this particular government you're talking about? Every single person who ran, exactly how many votes they had, all of it, everything. Sounds like it'd take you a super huge amount of time and be impossible, right? And also, what would the point even be? You have your idea for your story in mind, and you want to write that story. Who cares what it was like 150 years ago? If that's your mentality, that's perfectly fine. That's a completely valid way to write a story, especially if your story is meant to be like an analog for something in the real world. Like, if your story is really about the race relations in the United States, you probably don't want to do what I like to do when it comes to world building. I like to tell stories purely for escapist fantasy, and that's why I like to have all of that information. And with the information that you have, like the 150 years of all these different election results, that is a story in and of itself, isn't it? And what if you're not starting from the end point? What if you're not starting from this big idea of a story you want to tell? What if you're starting from literally nothing and have no idea what you even want to tell? A lot of people find it useful to have some kind of seed to grow from. Some little tiny point that strikes their interest and guides them along a story. That's what I'm talking about. You start at the beginning of this nation that you want to tell a story about, and you run its 150 years of elections and who was in power and what party they were, what their philosophies were. And you take all that information and you use that to make the story of this nation. And you use the story of that nation to tell the story that you want to tell, your novel or your cartoon that you're animating or your radio play, whatever it is. That's the style I use. And I'm going to be frank and upfront. It's a lot of work to do. Like Tolkien, he was sitting down writing an entire language like every other day just to tell his story, because by understanding how a language changes and evolves over time, you can characterize what happens to these people that speak this language. It's a real thing. It's a real field of study. You can probably go to a college and get a degree in it if it sounds interesting. Historic linguistics is probably what it's called. I'm not too sure off the top of my head. As a quick aside, I am preparing absolutely nothing for these episodes. Last time I did any kind of YouTube series, it just consumed 100% of my time. So I'm just going off the top of my head with a general checklist of stuff here on my phone I'm reading off to talk about. So if this seems kind of amateurish, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry because I don't want to spend literally all of my waking hours doing a top quality product that may or may not take off. This is strictly to help people who are interested, so it doesn't matter too much. But to get back on track, we're going to sit here and I'm going to show you my method for how to do that, how to take anything, absolutely anything, even if it sounds ridiculous, and make it happen, not just in pretty much no time at all once you set everything up, but how to do it again and again and again, to the point where you could potentially be making an entire universe every month if you wanted to. Because that's the thing about world building. If you get good at it, it's fun to do, and you might want to do a lot of it. But even if you don't want to do a lot of it, you want to write your one novel. You write your one novel. It doesn't really take off. Maybe the problem was the setting. Oh, great, now I got to come up with a whole new setting. That's going to be a lot of work. What if it didn't have to be? Because it doesn't. Or what if you write your novel, and then while you're writing, you write your novel, it's successful, and then you decide to get into running tabletop RPGs, and now you want to run a custom setting for your RPG, but you don't want to use the one from your novel because you feel you've played out all the concepts with the novel. No problem. You can bamf one out pretty much instantaneously. And I do mean you can bamf one out pretty instantaneously. So the heads up here, the way that this is going to be done and the way it's going to work is I'm going to teach you guys a little bit of programming. Now don't click off the video. It's actually not that hard. Old school programming is what we're talking about. There is absolutely no graphical user interfaces involved. I'm just going to teach you how to basically make a table and some dice that roll on that table, and then how to chain those tables together. And what it really comes down to is you write a couple lines that are easily understandable, and then you write some text files that are easily understandable, and the results of those text files get shuffled in clever ways to come up with these big, grand concepts. And let's say that you don't think that can be done. Now, here's something I've been working on for a while. Here's a problem. You're writing, and you're like, okay, my characters have come to this new town. What's this new town like? I have no idea. In this case, this is all geared towards fantasy, like swords and sorceries type fantasy. So let's be like, okay, I need a town. Bing, there's a town. You've arrived at the village of Stormshire. Stormshire is a gnomish village on the side of a major river with a population of 206 who enjoy fairly spacious yards, who are mostly some text that didn't render out because of a glitch I haven't solved yet. Stormshire's humble selection of homes and shop feature wattle and daub construction with good timber frames and stone foundation protected by thatched or single roofs. Most buildings with second floors are built in such ways to overhang the streets and the upper floors for more space, as the building size seems to be a primary indicator of wealth in the community. Most buildings are not decorated with any integral features, but instead use ivy, flowers, and other natural elements in planters or on trellises to breathe life into the structure they grow upon. Its buildings are placed around in a single narrow packed earth main street, which forms a clockwork spiral to give the village an overall circular shape. The riverside village possesses a thin fortified wall made from quarried stone blocks for defensive purposes, which possesses most of the features of a castle wall. It is, however, constructed cheaply and inexpensively from stone, and therefore poses no challenge to any army. but is overkill for most monsters and bandits. The village's fairly decent fortifications are visibly old, but obviously maintain similarity regularly. It is likely the local militia or garrison are tasked with occasional maintenance of the village's defenses. Something in your gut tells you may be unwelcome in Stormshire. The town seems like it's not showing you the side of itself it would show to others. People mostly ignore your questions. Many folks ask you to leave their establishments, even before you've walked inside them. A large carnival regularly stops in Stormshire, resulting in the village having dedicated spaces on the edge of town for the carnival to set up. It makes a stop in Stormshire twice a year, leading to a regular and dependable influx of travelers and coin. Stormshire was built on the crater left behind by a meteor, which has made it a heaven for spellcasters of all kinds. This has made Stormshire a center of academia, where the average commoner knows far more about the arcane than even scholars and sages from other lands. That's actually pretty decent and pretty good, right? This just seems like a well-thought-out, little basic description of a fantasy village, and it was created from thin air with this tiny little 96 kilobyte file I made that is just a simple batch script. If I open it up in a basic text editor, in this case just regular old Windows Notepad, you can see that it's not that complicated of a programming language. You got some little lines that say things about what it does, a couple instructions it's running here, one at a time. Then it gets a little bit crazy looking, but I assure you it's actually all pretty logical and easy to understand. And then here's the hard part. All this stuff, see all this complicated mess of nonsense? Yeah, it turns out all that's unnecessary. This program's actually way old, way old. I've had this for years. And there is a very nice and easy way to do this that absolutely anyone can do it. But this entire village, it was created by this primitive, hard, difficult thing that I made. And it created it by just picking options, shuffling them around, and throwing them together. Now, you might say that that doesn't seem creative, but that's just not true. There's tons of creativity in this, and all the creativity is in the construction of it. The program didn't decide that Stormshire was a name that a thing could have. It didn't just pluck that from the ether. I came up with a system by which Storm and Shire could be thrown together to make the single name Stormshire. And all these descriptions are also all my creations. This is literally the digital equivalent of writing down a bunch of note cards with separate elements and then shuffling them and dealing out a hand that creates a village. And it does it instantly. And more important than instantly, it does it repeatedly. And you could have it do it from another thing. I could have another program, another little script that just runs this script. Like, I can make a program that says, hey, make a kingdom. Okay, this kingdom has 73 towns or villages, and then just runs this 73 times. And then I have a folder right on there on my desktop that just has all 73 places in this kingdom, fully done, fully realized out. And it probably would just take like 30 seconds of real time. And then I can come in and look at everything and tweak it how I want, and then come up with how all these places interact. And then that's where the creative side comes in, taking these seeds that I have planted and coming up with how each of them affects the others. And the end result is a really excellent world. Like, really solid. It has more randomness than you would have just going off your own stuff, and that's actually good. Everything still makes sense as long as you put things into these that make sense, and with all of the others, nothing too out of place. And there's also kinds of interesting little bits of creativity to do in here that, once written out, make everything feel real, right? Like this bit, something tells you you may be unwelcome in Stormshire. They hate outsiders, and yet they have this large carnival that regularly stops by. Perhaps they've come to not trust anyone who doesn't come for the carnival because it's such a draw. Why else would someone come here? It's not carnival season. Or perhaps the carnival has recently turned sour to the villagers for some reason, and so they're suspicious of any outsiders at all. There's all kinds of little things, and these options, again, come from you. This program is simply a tool to make you more creative than you are on your own, just running through things. Or even better, when you can't be bothered to come up with something. And it doesn't just have to be villages. You can do this with absolutely anything, literally anything. I have a whole bunch of these things I could show you, and the one I want to show you most, the one that is kind of the thing I'm the most proud of, we can find that up here in my programs. And this is the World Maker. We're going to make something better than this along this journey. This was meant to be something I could run quickly for damping out a setting to run a game in for any old tabletop RPG. And it's not written in the same language. This is way more complicated, and I put way too much time and thought and effort into this because I really didn't need to. But this is exactly the same premise. Shuffling existing things together. You click it once, and we need something to open it up. Well, we'll open it in WordPad. And we got the world of Fyron, an Earth-like planet with no divine presence, overrun by anarchic hordes of demons with high magic available to mortals, and they've developed that magic for a long time, and they're also in the grips of the electric age. This is a full world. Everything here is stated and dealt out just like it was. Like that right down here, electric lighting to be found in the homes of the wealthy, where gas lamps serve as streetlights to illuminate the cities. Vehicle technology advanced to points where non-magic self-propelled carriages are commonly employed in place of pack animals to transport goods, and most wonderfully of all, the dream of the flying machine has been the last realized with the aeroplane. So it's this kind of steampunky setting with demons running around everywhere, and it just came from pre-set up stuff, and at the very end, look at this, a timeline of all these recent events of what's been happening. This is way more than enough to come up with your whole setting with on its own, but we can do better. And we will do better. And we'll actually exercise way more creativity. But this kind of stuff is all possible. You can do pretty much anything, like I've been saying this whole time. And of course, to do that, we need some decent tools. And I'm just going to show you the tools that I use and why I use them. First off, Libra Office. If you have Microsoft Word, use Microsoft Word. But Libra Office, exact same thing, completely free, open source software. Why use this instead of, say, Google Docs to just write down everything and type it up? Well, this is more of a business type of thing. If you do not intend to ever make any money off of your creations whatsoever, do whatever you want. Use Google Docs from the start, use anything. But if you have the local files, the first ones, made on your computer, on your hard drive, with an Office program, that .doc file or that docx file, whatever you save it as, has a thing called metadata. And that is the information about the document rather than the information contained in the document. And it will say when that file was created and by what user and on what computer. And that's the kind of information you need to prove that you actually created a setting if, say, Wizards of the Coast just yoinks your work and tries to pass it off as their own. And that doesn't necessarily happen with big companies all the time, but what if you're just going through a little publisher, like not one of the big guys, to publish a novel or something, and they try to prove that they actually owned this and came up with it in-house? If you don't have a way to prove that, you can't. And, well, Google Docs does do metadata too, but the courts will much likely find in your favor way quicker and way easier if you can be like, yeah, this is the computer that created it. It was created locally on this hard drive on this date at this time, long before these guys ever saw any of it. That's the kind of stuff you want. So do your initial work on a local machine. It's just a better idea. If you want to collaborate with other people after you've done your initial write-ups, go ahead and copy it into a Google Doc or whatever, and then share it with your editor or your proofreaders and do all your collaboration stuff. Or if your local software is also free and has that stuff built in, I'd recommend that. But for ease of access, Google Docs is fine. But you want to work with all your stuff on your initial machine just to keep your bases covered if you want to do anything commercial with it ever, flat out. And that's why an open source program like this is even better, because then technically, like, no one can claim ownership of this at all. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if it turned out there was some weird clause in Microsoft Office that anything created in it could potentially be, like, pulled by them somehow, or they claim partial ownership, I wouldn't be too surprised. Again, not a conspiracy theorist, but this is a way you can ensure that everything you create is absolutely 100% owned by you. That's always a good idea. Now, the next tool that we need for world building purposes is a way to research things. You should never, ever, ever, ever just assume that you are absolutely correct about how something works. And if it's something in your world like, I want magic to work this way, that's fine, right? But if you want to come up with something that makes sense, to be a little bit more realistic about your world, like, okay, so this particular kingdom is very, very good because it came up with a way to invent better steel, right? Well, there is nothing worse than having pedantic nerds private message you about how actually that would make inferior steel. So avoiding that is good, because it doesn't just protect you from those guys, it protects the reader's suspension of disbelief. The less things your reader has to pretend are actually true to enjoy your work, the more people can enjoy it and the better they can enjoy it. And what I mean by that is, like, when you're reading a book, you have to buy magic is real in order to treat magic as a real threat that could actually harm your characters. Or in the case that you're reading the work, you have to understand this magic is a real threat, and you have to act like it's real. Otherwise, Voldemort's just waving a stick and yelling some words. It's not going to actually do anything to Harry Potter. Who cares? The less of those the reader has to make, the better. They're already buying into magic. They shouldn't have to buy into the idea that actually less carbon in your steel makes better steel than more carbon. And, well, I see even that. I might be wrong about that. That might not be how steel works at all. It's kind of a shame that we don't have this instantly accessible, vast library of all human knowledge written in the common vernacular of man and source checked by everyone on the planet, so we can just quick and easily look up anything we ever need to. Oh, wait. Yeah, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is your friend. If you're younger and you're in school and you have teachers telling you that Wikipedia is the worst thing ever, that is factually wrong. Let's go to a random article right now. Okay, so this guy, Charles E. Stewart, politician. Not too much known on him, right? But look at this. This little one. What's this mean? What's a reference? So this isn't coming from Wikipedia. They're just aggregating all this knowledge. They are aggregated what do they know about this Charles E. Stewart from historyhouse.virginia.gov. And it's been retrieved rather recently. So you can check the sources. You can see who they got their information from and why. Let's go with another article. All right, the Dynamo Training Center. No idea what this place is. An educational facility, training ground, operated by the Canadian Premier League. Okay. Well, this isn't Wikipedia telling us about it. This is just the aggregated information they have. And they took their information from some kind of Russian newspaper website, another Ukrainian, so a bunch of Russian newspapers. So newspapers, reliable journalistic sources, probably, hopefully, but let's hope that it's not the Sun. And what about this one? Well, this information on this weird little type of fish, that's coming from this thing called the World Register of Marine Species and this thing called the Fish Database, which is pretty old, 1938. Both these sources, kind of interesting and cool. But yeah, that's my point about Wikipedia. This isn't one site telling you how it is. This is, in truth, a single website aggregating human knowledge from as many sources as it can find and easily organizing it into every single subject. You cannot buy a better encyclopedia than Wikipedia. You can get, like, World Book, right? And the complaint that teachers have about Wikipedia is, oh, well, it just can be edited by anybody. Anyone could change it to say anything. Yeah, they can. And then other people check it and change it back. It is an active, evolving document. Your encyclopedia, if some guy is just a complete dick and wants to change a fact in that encyclopedia, it's changed probably forever, right? But more realistically, if you have the 2012 version of the World Book and someone printed a wrong fact in it, that is wrong forever. Wikipedia can be corrected. Print stuff cannot. Now let's move on again to the next tool that you'll need for good world building. You find your information on Wikipedia about steel, right? And you figure out roughly how the ratios that they have to do. And maybe you aren't fine with just the abstract of, okay, so they need an access to a good source of carbon, a good source of iron, and then this stuff called molybdenum, or molybdenum. Let's come up with a fancy name for that. We'll call it Shella, just because it sounds cool. So they need carbon, they need Shella, and they need iron to make their really high quality steel. Well, if you don't want to just be like, they need this much of it, that, this much of that, this much of that for their process, and then just hand wave away the gaps, if it's going to be very important to your story that you get this right, like say you're writing a science fiction story and you want to get everything as close to accurate as you can, Well, it's kind of a shame that there isn't some kind of big supercomputer type calculation engine thing that you could use to crunch equations that you're not quite sure of and get results in plain simple English. Oh, wait, it's called Wolfram Alpha. If you're in college and you haven't heard about this website, this thing will save you. This thing literally can help you calculate just about anything you'd ever want to calculate. Like, let's try growth rate of fish population. Now, I'm pretty bad at spelling, especially when I'm a little sleepy, so please ignore that. Let's go ahead and, bam, growth rate of fish populations. It does take a little while to sort through this, especially if you're going something really specific. But, so, doesn't have anything for that specifically, but let's just try growth rate, see what comes up on that. Maybe we can find our way and navigate, right? Well, here's something a little bit more interesting to world building, right? Population growth, let's click there. Okay, so what about, the growth rate of populations for these different countries, right? Like Australia. Everyone knows Australia, right? But that's just following these links, right? So, but you can I can also get you things like data. It's pretty good at data, right? All this data you can get, not too bad. So we got off the calculation side, but this is also good for fetching just raw data, like the population of Australia is growing at a rate of 1.52% per year. If you want to come up with a realistic growth rate for countries on average, you can just look up every country in the world on this website, yoink this one little percentage, average all those, and maybe, I don't know, maybe Earth and humans have an average growth rate of like 1.6% or something. Who knows? But you can also do things like, well, actually, maybe we can just get that from this, right? So, let's go show distribution. Or what if we just go up here, actually, and type in world population growth? Okay, looks like humans grow at an average rate of 1.7% per year. Interesting. I wonder why and what makes up that huge difference. But if you were going to make one of those little generators I was talking about earlier, and you had your generator trying to come up with a realistic population over time, well, 1.07% per year. Not too hard of math to figure out. Okay, what about other tools? And those generators I just mentioned, like working on them in Notepad, that looks like it's kind of, a bit of a deal to do, like a not fun deal. Everything's all just fiddly text. There's no advanced features whatsoever. Nothing like sorting, nothing like tracking the line that you're working on, no syntax highlighting, i.e., if a word is important in the language you're working in, it becomes a certain color. Well, that's where this comes in. Notepad++. It is absolutely the single best thing I've ever coded anything in. And I do mean that. So we're going to minimize this, and I'm just going to open up this thing I've been working on currently. This is for an RPG I'm currently running. We're going to right-click, and I'm going to open this governor generator, which generates governors in Notepad++. And this is what it will look up. You set it to be a batch file, right? So you just go language, B, batch, which is what we're going to be learning later, by the way. And then look, all the command functions, they all get their own little colors, and you can figure out what they mean, right? And this is actually the much nicer way of doing it that I was talking about earlier. This right here, this will save you. This lets you make an arbitrarily long random list to roll from, and you can use it just once. But we'll get to that later. Like, for an example of the stuff this program makes, I'll just open one of these at random. Here's Libra Brunner. She's 21. She is says old, but 21-year-old gold Mer queen. You don't have to worry about the race. They're just ant people. She's from a planet called Tenchcon that doesn't actually exist anywhere. That's created by this particular program. But if you wanted to have a list of like names of places that people could be from, that's easily doable. This could be meaningful in your world and have just been picked randomly by this program. Now, Thyla is very short, average for a gold queen, which is a near-humanoid insect species, possessing a humanoid frame with the addition of a second set arm, short antennae, insectoid abdomen, and natural chitin armor. Her she should be her, a little bit of a pronoun problem there. Whoops. Her body is covered in a smooth butter yellow chitin, or perhaps chitin, however you want to pronounce it. She has lazy-looking black compound eyes set within heron-like sockets, long unbound black hair. She looks like they might be a merchant. A little bit of grammar problems pop up with these. And it seems like she might be friendly towards you. She has a large paper sack slung over her shoulder, blazing the holy symbol. She has a few piercings and is ruggedly dressed. Seems to be genuinely cheerful as a melodious voice. She's a self-described synthesist who espouses the virtues of revolutionary synthesis through the lens of contractualism. If you don't know what that is a complete political and moral philosophy that's just thrown right there at you. I personally don't know what a synthesis is. I'd have to look this up. Oh, hey, yeah, Wikipedia is a thing. Well, if I don't know what it is, how is it in this program? You can do things like go on Wikipedia and just type in list of political systems or political ideologies, and then you can just get the complete list and you can plep it right into a text document, and then this program can fetch them. So things you don't even know about can pop up, and you yourself will learn when you're world building. So let's actually take care of that right now, just as an example, right? Synthesist. What is a synthesist? Help us, Wikipedia. Okay, so fascist syndicalism. So it's a fascist kind of thing related to national. Okay. What if we try this recommendation thing? No. Okay. So it's a subset of fascism. So this is a person who's out to do a lot of control. The father of revolutionary syndicalism. That's the guy talking about it. Let's see what their actual ideologies are. No? Is it up on the top? Did I just miss it? Trade syndicate movement. What was that? From pre-World War II, President's Learning System movement. Generally favored class struggle. Okay, so this is about trying to radicalize people into being a little bit fascist, kind of make a trade empire. Interesting idea. At least maybe I'm misreading that, maybe I'm not, but whatever it is, I can go off of my impression of that and just work that into my world building, or I could look up all of this particular thing. I could specifically Google or Wikipedia up this specifically. And that just takes us to the baseline of the movement. Labor movement to establish local worker-based organizations and demands workers and strikes. Okay, so she favors workers going on strikes and contractualism. That is a moral philosophy that there is a social contract, and by being born, you enter into the contract and you must abide by it. If you break it, you should be punished. It's one of those things. So she believes that workers have the rights, and the rights are naturally ordained. That's kind of tells you a lot about who this person is as a governor, which is what this is generating. And then there's this little blurb that just tells you a little bit about who they are. So this is like the kind of side of the panel text that you'd see on a website if you're looking at your standard Wikipedia or wiki on a setting. Like, well, who's the governor of this particular town? Oh, this person. That's what this kind of thing is. And it's helpful. Oops, that's OBS. Sorry about that. But yeah, so that's what Notepad++ is for. It's for helping you quickly and easily and repeatedly and reliably to a certain level of quality consistently turn out all these little elements that you can then play around with for yourself. And of course, that's only half of my School of World Building. Like, all the art stuff comes in too, and it starts from the absolute bottom going up. By absolute bottom, like I like to start with the actual literal beginning of the universe, and use that to create the physical place that the mortals or gods or whatever the beings that this particular story and world's going to focus on. I'd like to create the place they live in, because it turns out that in the game of civilization, it has absolutely nothing to do with the players and everything to do with the board. The environment shapes who people are and who they become, because you either have to adapt to the environment or adapt it to you in some way to survive. That's just how life and existence is. Of course, it's a little bit different in settings where gods made everything and made their creations just so that they perfectly fit into this niche that they also created. But there still has to be those relationships. You have to... If you have a omnipotent being poof the universe into existence, poop that planet over there into being, and then put little peoples on it to live, well, they're not going to live if they're not adapted to the place that they're put. But in this case, rather than just natural selection and evolution over time and repeated generations and environmental pressures shaping the species, it's simply a divine plan. But that cleverness, that working, that niche, the way things mesh together to be something real, all has to make sense, unless, of course, the god is evil and just throwing things down for it to, see what happens. But no, gods have plans. They think things through. And so this method works not only for settings that don't have divinities that created stuff, but also for those that do, which is great. But let's say that you have your whole thing, and now Batch is a pretty limited language. It can't make pictures, so you're going to have to do your own map. Like, it can tell you everything about a country. It can't really make a map and put that country on a map for you. I've tried a lot of stuff to make that happen, and it just doesn't. At least never to anything that's satisfactory. So a good program to make a map, well, you could just bust out any old photo editor you want, really. Photoshop, Paint.net, GIMP, whatever, but cartography programs exist, and they're actually not that expensive, and they're pretty great, and that brings me to WonderDraft. I'm not sponsored by these guys. I wish I was sponsored by these guys, but WonderDraft is genuinely the best map-making program I have, and fantasy cartography is kind of my jam. I own programs that literally cost me like $700 in order to do fantasy cartography, and this thing blows literally all of them out of the water. No joke. And the stupid part is, this thing's like, look, it's $30. They take PayPal. This is dirt cheap when it comes to stuff that's specifically designed to make maps. And it can do a lot of the generation work for you. That's the main part about this. So let's just bring it up right now, give you a quick little demo. Again, not shilling for these people. Wish they were, I were. I could actually really use the money. So new, we're not going to use any template. There's different themes for different looks on your map. We don't care about those. We're just going to go ahead and make a 1080p one. No biggie. So it's going to load in. And if you have a sketch of what you want your world to look like, you can, of course, draw it all from scratch in this program. But this has a nice little generator in here, which is actually pretty useful. I believe to use it, we go ahead and find somewhere in here. Was it assets? No, of course it wasn't assets. Import, like you can import photos to trace over. Now we don't want new. Was it menu? Maps. I haven't really generated one in a while, so if you'll excuse me just a little bit. Is it this? That's the various brushes, paints, rivers, paths. I know it's here. Oh yeah, landmass wizard. Little bit of a derp. Sorry about that. It happens. So let's make a whole world, and let's have the coastlines be a little smooth. It's a world map, and let's get the detail fine design and water level, like what rough percentage of water it is, with 100% water, no percent water. Earth is around, I think, 80% water, so let's go like 74. And we can do seeds if we want, but who cares? Generate. Bing. Well, that's certainly a world. How about we go again? Okay. One more time. Perhaps there's a little too much water. Oh, look, we can just live slide it and change it, and then, well, we can't just do detail live or the roughness slide, but let's keep generating these things. And these all work. They're not like the best, but if you really wanted to, you could use this as a world map, or you could just use it as a starting point. Take a little landmass brush, do some painting. Oh, but it looks all bad. Well, that's because you should actually be using the raised landmass brush. And look, it does all these little nifty things that have different random shapes. That's not bad at all. And then, like, what about drawing all the nifty mountains and, like, the stuff? Places have mountains. Well, here we go. Mountains. And spray brush. I think that scale's a little too big. Let's make that smaller. Boop. Mountains. Mountains. What if we don't want to spray them like that? Let's draw a little orderly line. Mountains. Quick. Easy. Doesn't look great, but it's already kind of serviceable. So yeah, this is a really, really decent program just for getting yourself some little, quick, simple maps done. And even if you're not going to include a map in your final project, you have to have a map. It's just not optional. You are going to get so lost doing things like trying to remember how long it takes to get from one location to another in your world if you don't have a map. It doesn't have to be a fancy map. It doesn't have to look pretty. You don't have to spend too much time on it, but you at least need a thing with a scale and all the places on the map there, so you can go through, and this is the real killer here, measure the distance between places. And if I went ahead and said that the scale here that's 500 miles, right? Let's just say that's how it be. I can then come back here and I can be like, yo, map scale units, that's 220 miles. And then I can know how long it takes our main characters to travel from there to there to there. 220 miles, like probably a week or so. Depends on how fast this particular person or people can move. Important thing to have, really useful. Wonder Draft, it's great. Get it. You can get it's really well supported. There's tons of free assets you can download and paid assets you can buy to make even more nice detailed maps if you want. But all the base features, you don't need more than that. You can even do something like bam, there's a grid of hexes, and then you could just have each hex individually populated with what biomes there is and keep your data that way if you really wanted to get super specific, like if maybe you were doing an RPG or planning an MMO or something. Well, let's not worry about any of those. Let's discard all those changes. There's one more thing that I highly recommend. This isn't for everyone. This is for one specific group of people. And this is the people who want to create not just a fantasy planet or a fantasy world somewhere off there in a vaguely defined place where all the action takes place in this one planet. I'm not talking to you guys right now, but you're, of course, welcome to keep listening. I'm talking to the nutballs like me who have on occasion sat down and come up with something on the scale of Star Wars, where you have to keep track of tons of planets and stuff. This is Astro Synthesis 3.0. It's by Inboss Software. It's like $40, $35 right now, usually $40. This is a three-dimensional space map generation and creation tool. It is ridiculously useful. And I really don't think I could run big, grand, planet-hopping sci-fi adventure RPGs without it. And I don't think I could tell a story without it, but it would help so much. Yeah, I believe it's in maps. This is a lot of stuff for the game I'm currently entering. Here it is. Takes a little bit to open. Boom. Three-dimensional map. Zoom out. We got all the warp gates and where they go. And yeah, these look like planets hanging in space. I've just changed them to be different icons so that it fits that. But see, I can be like, boop. So this particular star system, the Endakrohurthu Alengatapan, this thing's name generation is garbage, but you can make your own name lists, so don't worry about it, I just rename it. But let's say I want to take a good look at this. Well, look, I can look at the actual star system. I don't have to just look at the whole clusters of star map. There's this whole zoom in thing, and I can just have it picture-in-picture up there. That's pretty neat, right? It gets way more neat. So, orbits. Feet per second. This is all physics enabled. You can actually watch orbits in real time at different speeds. You can watch the gas giants and everything whiz around. And that's more than just that's more useful than just being cool. This has travel calculations you can do for a realistic space flight if you want it. It's the full Monty package. Let's go ahead and file. I'll go new, blank sector, right? So we got ourselves a blank sector of space here. We can make this as big as we want. There's the whole sector properties menu. We can just tell it how big it is, or if we want it to be square rather than a sphere, whatever we want, right? So plugins, and I believe somewhere in here I should have. Well, I may not have it in this version of it, but there is a plugin to just generate at random anything you want. But the base way you do it is you go system. So let's just go ahead and say I want a yellow star like Sol. We can fiddle with these we really want. I'm not gonna. Bam. And we have a star right here. It's called Pitmurdia. Neat. All right, well, what's in it? And here's the whole body. You don't have to do anything but just place the star. It comes up with everything in it. There's a space station here. There's a bunch of these. There's a cold terrestrial planet. You can do the whole thing, right? But let's see if I can't find. Okay, a bunch of gas giants. So let's just use this one terrestrial. Where is it? Here it is. Is this moon inhabitable? No. We'll just use this. Right click. Properties. Surface map. Well, we don't have anything about this. Okay, well, what do we do about that? Edit surface map. Click. Save the sector first. And just ASDF, you know the drill. Save it. And it comes up with this little program where you can either import things or increase or lower temperatures, do all kinds of things. You can't see much of this as an ice ball, but you get the drill. This is a map that takes a lot of time to work, but you can eventually build a whole star system and then accurately measure the distance between stars, get your travel times for popping between planets and star systems. You get all that perfectly accurate and keep things consistent, and just knowing where things are and keeping track of all the little miscellaneous data, how many asteroid belts were in that one star system? Looks like just one. It also has 3 gas giants. That kind of detail, the stuff that gets a little bit lost or muddy, you can easily do it in this thing. And again, I seem to have accidentally uninstalled it, but there's a plugin where I could just hit F5 and it fills the entire space randomly for me with stars until I hit F5 again. Invaluable for science fiction stuff. And sadly, I'm not sponsored by NBOSS either. But this is the only program I know that can kind of do this sort of thing at all. If anyone knows of any other ones, please tell me, because this thing does have its limits and does have some annoying restrictions, and I'd love to see some other options. But as far as I'm aware, this is it. This is all there is. Oh, and another thing, just to mention, that's really cool if you're if you're doing a world building for role-playing game purposes. Yeah, this program comes with a web viewer. I'm not sure if it's live yet, but it's supposed to be coming out sometime this year. You can upload your map to the web, and they'll host it for free, and your players can just look at your map and see it. You don't have to buy the program to use the map of the setting. If you're doing a planet-hopping RPG, absolutely a great way to do it. Anyway, so the tools, the good world building tool, to go over it just one more time. Libra Office or any open source full Office program. You'll never know when you might want to make a slideshow or do a spreadsheet or something in addition to just basic word processing. Wikipedia for looking up stuff you don't know. Wolfram Alpha for helping you calculate stuff based on things you just learned or just keep your math correct. Notepad++ for making your own random generation tools, and we'll get into that when we get into that. Wonderdraft, great little map making program, has all the good features, blows everything else out of the water, reasonable price, one-time payment, no subscriptions. And if you have to make a map of space, well, here's Astro Synthesis 3.0, the one thing I know of to make a map of space in 3D. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. Could be quite a bit of time I've been talking, but this whole episode is, looks like I've been recording for about an hour. Yeah, that's all I'm going to do for today. Next episode, we'll actually get started on building something now that I've explained my philosophy and my methods and shown you all the tools we're going to use. You guys can take some time, let it get around to it. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to open a document, and we're going to come up with something. Anything that fits my mind. We're going to start up from the very big, broad brush strokes, and we're going to build something down there that's real specific that we can use, and just see how it turns out along the way. Hope you guys had a good time, and leave out.